Good morning, Dr. Morse, injury experts. So, Bucky Irving suffered what we thought was just a mild foot sprain in week 4. Then by midweek, we heard, hey, it's a little bit more than a mild foot sprain, and he's probably actually going to miss week 5. So then we actually heard yesterday, Sunday, that not only was it just a midfoot sprain, but also a shoulder injury. And I noticed that when he was on an injury report, it said foot slap, comma, shoulder. Now, they didn't comment on the shoulder at all, so I assumed it was pretty mild. But now we see this tweet here, and it actually says that he suffered a shoulder subluxation. Now, what does this mean? So the shoulder, the main glenohumeral joint in the shoulder is a ball and socket joint. Now, there's a thick ligament that holds that ball in the socket. Now, what essentially happens with this is the shoulder pops out of the socket and then most of the time pops back in. Now, this is more of a formality compared to a shoulder dislocation. The difference between the two, if within semantics, is essentially that one is a very mild version of the other. Subluxation usually auto resets and doesn't cause a whole lot of tissue trauma and a whole lot of labral tearing, whereas a shoulder dislocation is usually traumatic and usually requires the ability to have to put it back into the socket unless it's happened multiple times, and then it will auto reload. That's essentially what happened with Xavier Worthy. Now, he had a pretty moderate shoulder dislocation leading to a pretty large labral tear. The impression I'm getting here is Bucky Irving's isn't as quite as significant, but it's still an injury similar. So if we look at the shoulder almost like a clock, so it would be noon, 3, 6, 9 in the back. Now, the tricky part about the labrum is that traditionally we tear it from noon to 3. That's an anterior tear. But some people will tear it from 9 to 12, or what we call a slap tear will be from 3 all the way to 9, or some variant of that. Now, my suspicion is Bucky probably has 1 or 2 hours of tears, which is why it's on the milder side. But it's probably going to hold him out week 6 as well. They're going to probably hold out the foot injury as well as the shoulder injury. Why? Because if you think about it, what is Bucky trying to do with every play? He's lowering his shoulder to try to break a tackle and run through an opponent. Well, if your shoulder is unstable, you're going to have a lot more trouble doing that. Whereas Xavier Worthy is basically trying to catch, and then basically once he gets caught, unless he's got a free lane, he's probably just going to fall down. He's at very high risk for re-injury, whereas Bucky isn't quite as much, but the nature of his position, it will be higher. Would not be surprised if Bucky deals with this the rest of the season. It may not bother him a whole lot, but it'll be there. And then depending on the severity, possibly consider having this surgically repaired in the offseason. I personally fix these with stem cells, but some people prefer surgery. Nonetheless, I think that we saw the split yesterday, which is what we expected. Rachaad White with the dominant back, and Sean Tucker did a little bit, but not a whole lot. Hell of a win. Emeka Egbuka is fantastic, continues to be elite, although the separation numbers aren't the best. Target share isn't the best. He continues to be very dominant when he does get the ball. 3rd most ever points over the first 5 games ever. So long story short, Bucky probably going to be out week 6. This gives you a little bit more idea. I'm not overly concerned about the midfoot, but when you add the shoulder to it, that's probably why they're going to hold him out. We'll keep it more information as we get later on throughout the week, but expect Rachaad White to likely have another start, or at least a dominating part of the split if they're able to put Bucky in.